ELEX 2. ELEX 2 is one of those games that flies under the radar but has a way of pulling you in if you give it a chance. It's an open world RPG where you play as Jax, a former hero trying to unite the warring factions of a post-apocalyptic world before an alien threat destroys everything. The setup might sound familiar, but the execution feels unique. What makes ELEX 2 stand out is its world. It's a strange mix of sci-fi and fantasy, where jetpacks and lasers exist alongside swords and magic. The open world is huge and full of secrets, with factions that feel distinct and often morally gray. Exploring feels rewarding because the game doesn't hold your hand if you see something interesting. Chances are it's worth checking out. The combat can feel clunky at first, but as you level up and tweak your character's skills, it starts to click. It's the kind of game where you start out weak and earn every bit of progress, which makes every victory feel satisfying. The story is serviceable, but the real hook is how your choices shape the world. Factions remember how you treat them, and your alliances affect how the story plays out. It's not the most polished RPG, but it has heart and gives you the freedom to approach problems your way. If you're into open world games that reward exploration and don't mind a bit of roughness, ELEX 2 can be surprisingly addictive. It's not for everyone, but once it clicks, it's hard to put down. Kenshi. Kenshi is the kind of game that doesn't look like much at first glance, but once it grabs you, it doesn't let go. It's an open world sandbox RPG where the only goal is survival. There's no grand story, no hero's journey, just you, a brutal world, and the choices you make to carve out a life. You start with almost nothing. Your character is weak, broke, and at the mercy of the harsh wasteland. From there, it's entirely up to you. Do you become a trader running goods between towns? A wandering mercenary? A farmer building a small settlement? The game doesn't push you in any direction, and that freedom is addictive. Combat is tough but rewarding. You'll lose fights early and often, but instead of dying outright, you might get dragged off to recover or enslaved, forcing you to plan an escape. Every injury and scar tells a story, and the game's willingness to let you fail makes the victories feel earned. The world is alive and doesn't wait for you. Factions rise and fall, towns go to war, and characters live their own lives whether you interact with them or not. It's a tough, unforgiving environment, but that's what makes it so engaging. Kenshi isn't about flashy graphics or hand-holding, it's about creating your own story in a harsh, open-ended world. It's slow, challenging, and endlessly rewarding for players who love to figure things out on their own. Greedfall. Greedfall is a hidden gem for fans of story-driven RPGs. It's set in a 17th century inspired world with a unique twist colonial powers, exploring a mysterious island filled with magic, strange creatures, and indigenous tribes. You play as D. Sarday, a diplomat trying to navigate tense political factions, forge alliances, and uncover the island's secrets. What makes Greedfall addictive is how it balances exploration, story, and choice. The world feels rich and alive, with towns, forests, and ancient ruins begging to be explored. It's not open world in the traditional sense, but each area is packed with details and quests that often give you multiple ways to solve problems. Combat mixes melee, ranged, and magic, letting you customize your character to suit your style. Whether you prefer swinging a sword, casting spells, or using traps and firearms, the game gives you room to experiment. And while combat is fun, diplomacy and dialogue play just as big a role. Your choices shape relationships with factions and characters, which can impact how the story unfolds.
Is the only son of the Prince d'Orsay.
The writing and characters are the real draw. The factions have complex motivations, and your companions, each with their own stories and goals, add depth to the journey. The game doesn't shy away from moral gray areas, making your decisions feel meaningful. Greedfall isn't perfect, some mechanics feel dated, and the pacing can drag, but it offers a compelling blend of exploration, character building, and narrative. If you like RPGs that give you freedom to play your way, it's worth diving into. The Surge 2. The Surge 2 is one of those games that sneaks up on you with how addictive it can be. It's a sci-fi action RPG set in the ruins of a dystopian city overrun by rogue machines, crazed survivors, and nanotech horrors. You wake up in a hospital after a mysterious plane crash and are thrown into a brutal fight for survival. The combat is where the game hooks you. It's methodical and precise, much like Dark Souls, but with its own twist targeting specific enemy body parts. Want a new weapon or armor? You'll need to focus attacks on an enemy's arm or leg, cut it off, and claim it for yourself. It's a risk-reward system that keeps fights tense and rewarding. The world feels alive, even in its desolation. Jericho City is a sprawling, interconnected map full of shortcuts, secrets, and challenging enemies. Exploration is rewarding, with plenty of upgrades, crafting materials, and lore to discover. The level design encourages curiosity without feeling overwhelming. The progression system keeps you coming back. You'll constantly tweak your exo rig, experiment with implants, and adapt your loadout to suit your playstyle. Every upgrade feels earned, and the constant cycle of exploration, combat, and improvement is hard to put down. While the story isn't its strongest point, The Surge 2 shines in its gameplay loop and world design. If you're into challenging action RPGs with a unique combat system, this one can easily pull you in and keep you playing for hours. Middle-earth: Shadow of War. Middle-earth: Shadow of War takes the foundation of its predecessor and cranks everything up. You return as Talion, still bonded to the Wraith Celebrimbor, and your mission is simple: raise an army, take down Sauron, and claim Mordor for yourself. What makes this game addictive is the Nemesis system. It takes orc captains and turns them into dynamic rivals. Every fight, victory, or defeat changes your relationship with them. Orcs remember past encounters, adapt to your tactics, and sometimes come back after you thought you killed them. Recruiting orcs to your army and watching them rise through the ranks or betray you is endlessly entertaining. The combat is fast, fluid, and satisfying. It builds on the Arkham-style system but adds depth with new abilities, gear, and the thrill of commanding your own orc army. Fortress sieges are a standout feature, letting you lead your troops into massive battles to conquer enemy strongholds. The open world is sprawling, with distinct regions full of collectibles, side missions, and secrets. While the story doesn't break much new ground, it's enough to keep you moving through the world. The interplay between Talion and Celebrimbor adds tension, especially as their goals begin to diverge. Shadow of War can feel overwhelming at first with all its systems and mechanics, but once you settle in, it's easy to lose hours building your army and plotting your next siege. If you enjoy dynamic gameplay where the world responds to your actions, this one is hard to put down. Deliver Us the Moon. Deliver Us the Moon is a quieter kind of game, but it sneaks up on you with how engaging it becomes. It's a sci-fi adventure that places you in the role of an astronaut sent to the moon to save humanity from an energy crisis. The story is straightforward but compelling, exploring themes of isolation, sacrifice, and hope. What makes the game addictive is the way it unfolds. You're piecing together the mystery of what went wrong at the lunar base. Through logs, holograms, and abandoned spaces, you uncover the fate of the crew and the decisions that led to this crisis. It's a mix of exploration and puzzle solving that keeps you moving forward, always curious about what's next. The gameplay balances simplicity with immersion. You navigate zero-gravity sections, solve environmental puzzles, and occasionally manage life or death situations like oxygen shortages. It's not overly challenging, but the tension and atmosphere make every moment feel significant.
We used to call it home.
Visually, the game is stunning. The lunar landscapes and the empty halls of the base are beautifully designed, creating a sense of awe and loneliness. The sound design enhances this with a subtle, haunting score that underscores the emptiness of space. Deliver Us the Moon doesn't rely on action or flashy mechanics. Instead, it pulls you in with its story, atmosphere, and the satisfaction of discovery. It's a short experience, but one that sticks with you, making it a great choice for anyone who loves thoughtful, immersive games. Mad Max. Mad Max doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it nails the atmosphere of its wasteland setting and delivers a game that's surprisingly addictive. You play as Max, a lone survivor trying to build the ultimate car, the Magnum Opus, while surviving the brutality of the post-apocalypse. What hooks you is the world. The wasteland is vast, barren, and oddly beautiful, filled with sandstorms, towering cliffs, and remnants of a world gone by. Exploring it feels rewarding whether you're scavenging for scraps, raiding enemy camps, or uncovering hidden relics from the past. The car combat stands out. You'll spend a lot of time in your Magnum Opus upgrading it with weapons, armor, and speed boosts to take on raiders and warlords. The battles are chaotic and fun, with harpoons and flamethrowers turning every skirmish into a high-octane spectacle. On foot, the combat leans heavily on the Arkham-style brawling system. It's simple but satisfying, with brutal finishers that make each fight feel gritty and impactful. The game also gives you plenty of upgrades for Max himself, letting you improve his gear and survival abilities. The story is straightforward, a revenge tale with a focus on survival and redemption, but it's enough to keep you invested. The characters you meet, especially your quirky mechanic sidekick Chumbucket, add personality and depth to the experience. Mad Max is a game that understands its world and makes you want to spend time in it. Between the car combat, exploration, and sheer sense of atmosphere, it's easy to lose hours just surviving and thriving in the wasteland. Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning. Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning is a re-release of a game that didn't get the love it deserved the first time around. It's an action RPG set in a sprawling fantasy world with rich lore, fast-paced combat, and a ton of freedom to play how you want. You play as the Fateless One, resurrected from death and untethered from destiny. This setup lets you shape your character however you like, whether it's as a mage, a rogue, a warrior, or a mix of all three. The flexibility is addictive, with a deep skill tree and the ability to respec at any time. The combat is where the game really shines. It's fluid, fast, and packed with variety. Switching between swords, bows, spells, and unique abilities keeps battles engaging. The addition of powerful Reckoning mode, where you can unleash devastating attacks, adds another layer of fun to the mix. The world of Amalur is huge and full of quests, dungeons, and secrets to uncover. While the story itself is straightforward, the lore crafted by fantasy author R.A. Salvatore gives depth to the factions and characters you encounter. The game leans into its vibrant art style, which still holds up today even if some of the animations feel dated. Re-Reckoning tweaks and polishes the original, but the core remains the same, an RPG that lets you lose yourself in its world. If you're into games with great combat and lots of customization, this one's easy to pick up and hard to put down. Metro Exodus. Metro Exodus takes the claustrophobic tension of its predecessors and expands it into a semi-open world format while keeping its heart intact. You play as Artyom, leaving the dark tunnels of the Metro behind to lead a group of survivors across a devastated Russia in search of a new home. The game combines tight, atmospheric storytelling with exploration. Each region you travel to feels distinct, from snowy wastelands to lush forests and arid deserts. The environments are packed with small details that tell stories without words, and the shift to open spaces doesn't sacrifice the sense of danger. Supplies are still scarce, and every bullet or medkit feels like a valuable resource. Combat is methodical and tense. You'll need to manage your gear carefully, crafting and upgrading your weapons as you go. Stealth remains a key option, but when fights break out, they're chaotic and satisfying. The game also leans heavily into immersion, with features like cleaning your weapons or wiping grime off your gas, pulling you deeper into its world. The story focuses on hope and survival, with quieter moments that let you connect with the characters traveling with you. These interactions add weight to the journey, making the stakes feel personal and real. Metro Exodus doesn't abandon its roots but evolves them. It's a gripping mix of exploration, survival, and storytelling, making it one of the most engaging entries in the series. If you're a fan of atmospheric shooters or well-crafted worlds, it's worth your time. Prey 2017. Prey 2017 is one of those games that hooks you with its atmosphere and keeps you engaged with its freedom to experiment. Set on the sprawling Talos 1 space station, you play as Morgan Yu, waking up to discover that the station has been overrun by shape-shifting alien creatures called the Typhon. The mystery of what went wrong and who you can trust drives the story forward. The gameplay feels like a modern twist on classic immersive sims like System Shock and Deus Ex. You're given tools, abilities, and choices, and how you approach problems is entirely up to you. Sneak through vents, hack locked doors, or go in guns blazing, it's all valid. The Typhon abilities you can unlock, like mimicking objects or creating energy blasts, add another layer of creativity. The station itself is a character. It's beautifully designed with interconnected areas that reward exploration and a sense of discovery. Finding hidden pathways, reading logs, and piecing together the lives of the crew adds depth to the world and makes Talos 1 feel alive, even with its eerie emptiness. Combat is tense, the Typhon are unpredictable, and the mimics can turn into everyday objects, keeping you on edge. Resources are limited, so every encounter feels like a decision fight: run or find another way. Prey thrives on its ability to let you play your way. Whether you focus on exploration, combat, or uncovering every piece of the story, it keeps pulling you back in. If you're into games that reward curiosity and creativity, it's an experience you won't forget. Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium isn't just a game, it's an experience that sticks with you. You play as a detective waking up in a trashed hotel room with no memory of who you are, what you're doing, or why there's a dead body hanging from a tree outside. From there, you're thrown into a dense, branching narrative where every decision you make shapes the story. The gameplay is almost entirely dialogue and skill-based. There's no combat in the traditional sense. Instead, you rely on your wits, skills, and sometimes sheer luck to navigate the investigation. Your character is a mess, and the choices you make, what to say, who to trust, how much alcohol to drink determine whether you rise to the occasion or spiral further into chaos. The skills are where the game shines. They're not just stats, they're voices in your head. Each one, from your logical side to your impulsive gut feelings, offers advice, commentary, and sometimes outright bad ideas. It's up to you to decide who to listen to. The world of Greedfall is rich, grimy, and alive. Every character you meet has a story, and the game rewards curiosity. You'll uncover deep political and personal themes, ranging from class struggles to existential dread, all written with razor-sharp humor and heart. Disco Elysium is for players who love story, character development, and thinking their way through challenges. It's unconventional, thought-provoking, and often hilarious, making it one of the most addictive narrative-driven games out there. If you want a game that gives you total freedom to shape your detective's path, this one is a must-play. The Outer Worlds. The Outer Worlds is a quirky sci-fi RPG that combines sharp writing with an open-ended approach to problem solving. You wake up from cryosleep as a colonist stranded on the edge of the galaxy, and it's up to you to decide whether to help or exploit the struggling colonies of Halcyon. What makes the game addictive is its freedom. You can approach quests however you want, talk your way out of a problem, hack into systems, or shoot your way through. Your choices have real consequences, shaping the story, the world, and how characters see you. The dialogue is a standout. The writing is witty and full of personality, from corporate slogans to sarcastic remarks. The companions you meet each have their own quirks and backstories, and their banter adds depth and humor to your journey.
I know my G-valves from my catalyzers, and I can keep your ship sinking.
Combat is straightforward but satisfying, with a mix of ranged and melee weapons that can be upgraded and customized. The time dilation mechanic lets you slow down time to target specific body parts, adding a strategic edge to fights. The world is colorful and diverse, with planets and space stations that each feel unique. The game doesn't overwhelm you with its size. Instead, it focuses on tightly designed areas packed with detail, side quests, and secrets. The Outer Worlds might not be the biggest RPG, but its charm, humor, and player-driven choices make it a game that's hard to put down. If you enjoy narrative-focused games where your decisions truly matter, it's a journey worth taking. Bright Memory Infinite. Bright Memory Infinite is a fast-paced, visually stunning first-person shooter that mixes gunplay with melee combat in a way that feels fresh and fluid. You play as Shelia, an operative for the Supernatural Science Research Organization, sent to stop a mysterious phenomenon that's tearing through the sky and connecting dimensions. The plot? It's wild, chaotic, and more of a backdrop for the action than a central focus. The real star here is the gameplay. You seamlessly switch between firing guns, slashing enemies with a sword, and using special abilities like grappling or energy bursts. It's all about momentum, stringing together combos, and mixing ranged and melee attacks keeps every encounter engaging. The combat feels like a mix of Doom and Devil May Cry with its focus on speed and style. Visually, the game is a treat. From futuristic cityscapes to lush ancient ruins, every environment looks sharp and detailed, showcasing the power of its small development team. The fast-paced action and cinematic flair make it feel like you're playing through a blockbuster movie. That said, it's a short experience clocking in at just a few hours, but what's there is polished and replayable with enough variety in combat to keep you coming back. Bright Memory Infinite is for players who want fast, stylish action without a heavy time commitment. It's not deep or long, but it's a burst of fun and spectacle that's hard to ignore. If you're into fast-paced shooters with a bit of flair, it's well worth checking out. Pathologic 2. Pathologic 2 is an intense survival horror RPG that challenges you in ways most games don't. You play as a healer returning to your plague-stricken hometown to confront a mysterious illness that's tearing through the population. It's not just about survival, it's about tough choices, limited resources, and the constant pressure of time slipping away. The gameplay puts you in a constant state of tension. Food, water, medicine, and sleep are all scarce, and managing your own health while trying to save others feels like an impossible task. Every decision matters. Do you spend precious time helping a stranger, or do you focus on keeping yourself alive? The town itself feels alive in the worst way. Its streets are grim and oppressive, filled with desperate people and eerie sounds. The atmosphere is suffocating, but it draws you in. The NPCs you meet have their own goals and personalities, and their fates often hinge on your actions or inaction. The storytelling is cryptic and surreal, filled with moral ambiguity and philosophical undertones. It doesn't spoon-feed you answers, which makes every discovery feel personal and meaningful. The plague itself becomes a character, an ever-present threat that forces you to confront your limits. Pathologic 2 isn't for everyone. It's brutally difficult and emotionally draining, but that's exactly the point. If you're willing to embrace the challenge, it's one of the most unique and rewarding experiences you'll find. It's not just a game, it's a test of how far you're willing to go to make impossible choices.
Make haste, son. I truly need you.
Vampyr. Vampyr puts you in the shoes of Dr. Jonathan Reed, a newly turned vampire in 1918 London during a deadly flu epidemic. As a doctor, your duty is to save lives, but as a vampire, your survival depends on taking them. That moral conflict lies at the heart of the game. The gameplay is a mix of combat, exploration, and dialogue. You'll roam the streets of a beautifully atmospheric, plague-ridden London, investigating mysteries, treating the sick, and fighting off hostile vampires and hunters. The combat lets you use melee weapons, firearms, and vampiric powers, but it's the decisions you make outside of fights that truly shape your experience. Here's the twist: the more people you kill, the stronger you become. Each citizen you meet has a backstory and relationships, and feeding on them can lead to dramatic changes in their community. Do you sacrifice your humanity for power, or try to navigate the game as a healer with a clean conscience? The game doesn't make it easy, and the consequences of your actions ripple through the story. The narrative is engaging, digging into themes of morality, identity, and the weight of your choices. The characters are well written, and the branching dialogue paths give you plenty of room to shape your story. While Vampyr isn't perfect, the combat can feel repetitive, and some mechanics are a bit clunky. It's a game that rewards patience and moral contemplation. If you enjoy stories that force you to grapple with tough decisions, this one will keep you hooked. It's dark, moody, and refreshingly different.
It is the hunger, the need for blood.
Hardspace Shipbreaker.
Hi, your mic's still messed up.
Hardspace Shipbreaker is one of those games that turns a simple concept into something unexpectedly addictive. You're a blue-collar worker in space, dismantling massive derelict ships to pay off a crushing debt to a mega corporation. The setup is straightforward, but the execution is where the magic happens. The gameplay revolves around precision and strategy. Armed with a laser cutter and a grappling tool, you float through zero gravity, slicing apart ships piece by piece. You'll separate valuable materials from scrap, avoid hazardous components like explosive fuel tanks, and carefully maneuver the parts into designated zones. It's a mix of puzzle solving, resource management, and risk-taking that keeps you engaged.
Jobs and opportunity.
Each ship presents a new challenge. Early on, you'll deal with smaller, simpler vessels, but as you progress, the ships get larger and more complex. Mistakes can be costly. An explosion or misplaced cut can ruin your day, or worse, get you killed. The game rewards careful planning, but also lets you experiment, which keeps the process fresh. The atmosphere pulls you in. The hum of your tools, the crackle of comms chatter, and the quiet vastness of space create an immersive work environment. The story, while subtle, touches on corporate exploitation and the human side of labor, adding depth to your role. Hardspace Shipbreaker is a slow burn, but its loop of problem solving and progression is deeply satisfying. If you enjoy games that let you master a craft and take pride in your work, it's easy to lose hours breaking apart ships and perfecting your technique. Sherlock Holmes, the Devil's Daughter.
See that she must never know.
Sherlock Holmes, the Devil's Daughter is an intriguing blend of detective work, exploration, and light action sequences that offers a fresh take on the iconic detective. You step into the shoes of Sherlock as he solves 5 cases, each with its own twists, suspects, and moral dilemmas. The gameplay revolves around investigating crime scenes, piecing together clues, and questioning suspects. The deduction board is the centerpiece where you link clues to form conclusions. What makes it engaging is that you can arrive at different outcomes based on how you interpret the evidence, leading to varying resolutions for each case. The game adds some variety with action and stealth sequences. While they're not as polished as the detective mechanics, they help break up the slower moments. Puzzles also play a significant role, requiring logic and observation to progress, which keeps things interesting. The Victorian London setting is richly detailed, immersing you in the time period with its cobbled streets, dimly lit alleys, and atmospheric interiors. The story, while not as tight as previous entries in the series, dives into Sherlock's personal life, adding some emotional weight to the usual cerebral investigations. Sherlock Holmes, the Devil's Daughter isn't without its flaws. Some mechanics feel clunky, and the pacing can be uneven, but it captures the essence of being a detective. If you enjoy solving mysteries and piecing together stories, it's an engaging experience that keeps you thinking.